Hello and welcome to the shop. Behind me I have a Grizzly dust collection system. Now I've had this for a little over a year and I really haven't employed it on a regular basis. I found out recently while I was making some cooler boxes out of pallets, doing a lot of jointing and planing, just how desperately I need to get this unit set up and running full time in my shop. Up top there you can see the box. I recently purchased the unit to convert it to the module to convert it to 220. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to turn my attention to my loft and I'm going to start working on cleaning the loft off so that I can get a permanent spot for this dust collector to be mounted. Here's a quick peek at the loft and you can see there's a lot of miscellaneous stuff up here. This is where I plan to mount the dust collector. So I've got to get this stuff moved out of the way so that I can get the dust collector up here and get it into position. That's phase one. I've got the space in my loft completely cleared and cleaned, and I'm ready to move the dust collector up. I've cleaned out the area around the dust collector so that it's easily accessible. I think what I'm going to start by doing is wiring it for 220. That way I can wire it while I'm standing down on the ground floor as opposed to having to go up and down the ladder looking for tools. I have the new 220 module right here. In order to install this, I've got to first remove the front panel of the remote control unit, and then we'll go ahead and get this installed and we'll rewire the motor for 220. Now that I've got this rewired, my next step is to head to the hardware store and I am going to replace the plug that was on this end with a 220 plug. I'll need to pick up an outlet for the wall as well as some conduit and a 220 breaker for my breaker box. I'm ready now to go ahead and remove the dust bin at the bottom, and once that's removed, I'm going to unbolt the Cyclone and get it out of the way. This will take a lot of weight as well as a lot of bulk away from the unit and make it easier for me to move. Now that I've got the Cyclone removed, I'll be able to rotate it and reinstall it. That way the intake is coming from the front of the machine so I can reduce my profile along the wall in my loft. The last step before moving this up to the loft is to remove these bolts that will allow me to remove the top section of the dust collector from the wheeled bottom section, and this is all that's going to go up to the loft. So that it doesn't get in the way, I'm going to go ahead and remove the filter bag. That way we don't catch on anything and tear it up, as well as the possibility of stepping on it and tripping while we're trying to move this thing up the steps. All right, let's get it up to the loft. The top section proved to be far too heavy for one person to carry up a ladder, so I went ahead and unbolted the motor / impeller assembly, and this way I'll be able to take them up individually. Should be no problem, and I'll reassemble them once they're on the loft. I've got the main section of the dust collector as well as the motor impeller up on the loft. What I'm going to do now is start going through my box of supplies and figuring out how I want to build the rack that this is going to hang from. I've gone ahead and added angle iron to the top of my dust collector housing. This angle iron will be used with some S-hooks and some cable to hang the dust collector. I ended up replacing the bolts that hold the angle iron to the dust collector because they just weren't long enough. I didn't feel like I was getting a good enough bite, so I bought a longer bolt to make sure I had plenty of bite, and I used some lock washers to keep those bolts from loosening up over time. I've got the bottom and the sides of my box that will hold the dust collector already put together. I'm going to go ahead and move this up to the loft before I add the top section on, simply because the weight is getting to be a bit much and I don't want to have to fight this by myself up the ladder. I've got the frame assembled around the dust collector. Next up, I want to go ahead and put the motor and impeller back in, and then we'll start working on hanging the dust collector from the steel cables. The 4 eyelets installed inside my frame that my cables will mount to. Next step is to raise the dust collector up 1/4 inch with some shims, get the cables cut and get them mounted. I have the dust collector hanging now from the frame. You can see it is about maybe 1/4 inch off the floor. The only issue I have is my tolerance is kind of tight right here, so if there's any vibration in it, it does bump these 2 back posts where this rail is. My thought is what I could do is unbolt these and move them to the outside, which would give me plenty of clearance, and that issue goes away. As for the front of the dust collector, there's plenty of clearance right here so that the control unit is not going to hit it, and the electronic eye right here that senses to turn it on and off is far enough below this I can hit it straight on, but most of the time I'll be hitting it from down below, so I should be able to get a nice angle on that. I needed some leveling feet for my dust collector frame, and Big Box didn't have any, so I made my own. I just cut out some 90-degree pieces of wood from scrap. I drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the bottom of the wood with a Forstner bit, drove a nut into the hole, threaded up a nice bolt, put a jam nut on it, and now I'll be able to mount these in the corners of the frame and level that dust collector up perfectly. I ran a dedicated 220 volt 15 amp breaker for the dust collector. I ran the wire through conduit and installed a special plug and outlet just for this unit. Now that the dust collector is hanging in its new location and the electric has been run, it's ready for action. At this point, I'm going to stop this video and put this project on hold. I've mapped out all the piping that I want to use in my garage, and it's going to come to about $320. I am not in a position to spend that money right now, so this project is going to be on hold for just a little bit until I'm able to put together the funds to buy the piping and the fittings to finish the project. So with that in mind, I'm going to call phase 1 of the dust collection move finished. When the funds come available, I'll start phase 2, and I'll do a little video on that and let you guys know how that went. I'd really like to thank you for following along. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I'm really excited about where I'm at right now, and I'm looking forward to finishing. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon. Have a great evening, everybody.